What's the worst way someone you've seen get fired? I was a finance director at a car dealership. We had 3 new sales reps start that week. On Saturdays, we had order lunch from a local restaurant and send one of the new staff to pick it up. The rep we sent gets a speeding ticket, reckless driving 20 mph over the limit, does a couple shots of tequila at the restaurant waiting on the food, then ordered surf turf filet mignon lobster tail for themselves when told it was to be a salad or sandwich menu item. The idiot put the tequila shots on the tab that was emailed to the dealership. My first job ever was for Baskin-Robbins when I was 15. I went in for my first day of training excited to finally be making pocket money. The owner made me try to memorize the ice cream flavors in the first 30 seconds of being there. When I was unable to recite them perfectly in their order, he did this big hand motion and screamed training over. I laugh now, but man, that was crushing for a nervous teenager. I didn't see it, but somehow the 19-year-old forklift driver who was in charge of the temp warehouse ran into center support with such force it bent and totaled the forklift. He ran off without telling anyone. I had to call the boss and explain what had happened. He turned up the next day like nothing had happened and didn't understand why he was fired. I had to let someone go once. For a lot of reasons, but tardiness was a big factor. Not a 5 minutes late guy, like 4 hours late, and acted like nothing happened. The day of his firing came. He was late. The damn guy was late to being fired. Boss man always said if you fall off the roof you're fired before you hit the ground. This kid I went to HS with got fired at his first job post-college on his first day of work for trying to steal company data. Last I checked, he got involved with the Fire Festival guy and made a cameo in the documentary. Not fired but quit. And it wasn't the worst, it was just incredibly weird. Guy was really strange. Anytime he was asked questions about how long it would take to complete something in meetings, he would simply get up and walk out. He took ages for even the really simple stuff, and he was, essentially, a short time away from being put on a plan and booted. Thankfully he put in his notice, but it was the day of his leaving that was remarkably weird. My boss went over to walk him out at lunch, collect his ID, etc., and the guy runs away. He ducked down and hid in the middle of the cube maze. My boss walked around looking for him, and was about to call security when the guy popped up from around a corner and did the tickle thing on my boss' tummy, laughing. For everyone who saw it, no one knew what to do. It was surreal. He stood up, laughing, handed in his badge, and walked out. 3 months later another employer called asking for a reference. We didn't give one. I don't know if it counts as fired per se, but one of my drivers was flying to his home state and decided to punch a flight attendant in the face less than 2 weeks after 911. Never was seen or heard from again. When I worked at a supermarket years ago, a new guy started at 6 in the morning with me. He looked really hungover. He was working with me and he kept disappearing for 20 minutes every now and again. It was a big supermarket, so I just figured he was getting his bearings. He took lunch at 11:3 but came back at 2 pissed as a fart. Started smashing up the freezer section and trying to fight every man he saw. Police were called. He was arrested. Never saw him again. I had a coworker who got suddenly fired. We didn't know the reason, and days after, her furious parents went to the company building to complain to the management about the sudden termination of their daughter, claiming that the termination is unjust, and that she is diligent and reports to work every day like how a parent complains to the principal's office. Turns out, this coworker only come inside the office to clock in for work and go out again to be with the boys, smoking and whatever they were doing, coming inside the office again to clock out without doing any tasks. I worked in an office that had different parts of the business spread out over a couple different floors. They announced layoffs on another floor and mentioned this guy I worked with in their announcement. People that were on that floor came down to console my coworker about losing his job and were like, "We're really sad to see you go." And he had no idea what they were talking about. They'd announced it upstairs to the whole floor before even talking to him. I was working in IT for a company and would receive termination lists from HR so that we could remove the employees from our systems. Went on vacation with my wife, came home, turned my BlackBerry back on and got a term list from HR with my name on it. A very WTF moment. Not really a crazy story, but harsh and unnecessary. We had a girl that was struggling a couple of weeks into the job. She had to commute 1 hour 15 minutes each way. They let her drive in, fired her at 9 a.m. So no pay for the day, and 3 hours on the road for something that could have been a phone call or done at 5 p.m. the day before. Guy was high on something. He hit a steel beam with his forklift. The forklift was impaled on the beam and the bolts attaching it to the ground flew off. The metallic rattle was heard and felt on the entire warehouse. Managers and supervisors ran to him to check on him. He was surprisingly unhurt. When asked what happened, he started cursing and blaming the beam for being placed in the incorrect spot. That specific section of the warehouse was completely empty, and the beam was painted radioactive yellow in order for forklift drivers to not miss it. Guy had a habit of speeding up unnecessarily. Guy tested positive during a last-minute drug test. He had already been reported before for using drugs in the parking lot and for having a nasty attitude. He was fired that same day. Not really fired, but we had an intern show up 40 minutes late on his first day. Then the cops showed up 15 minutes later saying they had been chasing him for the past hour. He was taken away in cuffs. I work at a childcare institution with kids aged 1-6. The worst way I've seen someone get fired was when their boss publicly humiliated them in front of their colleagues, listing all their mistakes without any empathy. Worked in a restaurant, and on his third day of work, a new employee showed a picture of his dick that he saved on his phone to several female employees. Manager says that he has to go to his office after his shift so that he has to get a warning. Ends up grabbing the big bag of salt and black pepper and starts throwing it into all of the food that was prepped for a Saturday night and ran away. Freshman year of high school, I joined the D&D club, and the teacher who supervised was a great guy. Then my sophomore year came around and he was accused by a girl who claimed that said teacher was sexually assaulting her. Then rumors popped up about kids doing the deed in his classroom during lunch while he was gone, and about the teacher and his girlfriend doing the deed alone during lunch in his classroom. The teacher was removed from the district and he could never come back, so basically he was fired. All of these rumors were false. It irritates me that he was dealt unjustly by a single false accusation. My mom's best friend is 60. Let's call her Mary. She lost her job and her daughter has a cleaning business. They clean offices in the evenings. Daughter offered her a part-time gig while she looked for something else. Mary did her best, but apparently it wasn't good enough for daughter. She fired her mom over text. My mom was there and she cried. WTF? While walking back to the office from a meeting on the other side of the site, a well-paid engineer was told by his boss in front of the plant manager that he needed to now do XYZ from now on. To which he replied, "I'll resign before I do that." The plant manager replied, "Thanks, I accept your resignation," and was handed his final check and escorted off-site before knock-off time.